So today we're going to look at some Zen poetry, and I believe most of you have this book, The Enlightened Heart. We'll be reading out of this, and I'd like to start with a poem from Bunan. It's on page 85. Most of these poets I don't know much, or in some cases I don't know anything about their lives. There's a thing that my teacher Maharishi said once. He said that the trying to say anything significant about the life of a saint, meaning an enlightened person, he said it's like trying to describe them by tracing their footprints in the sand. You know, just looking at the external events. Oh, they were born then, they died this, happened, that. He said that's like the footprints in the sand. It has nothing to do with what they are, because what they are, of course, is the boundless. So that's just my note from my mom. Is my note from my guru about not knowing anything about these poets. So Bunan, page 85. Die while you're alive and be absolutely dead. Then do whatever you want. It's all good. Okay. And again, die while you're alive and be absolutely dead. Then do whatever you want. It's all good. Okay. Any comments? What's talk to me? Talk to me. What's this doing for you? What's this saying to you? Is he advocating suicide? What's he talking about when he says die while you're alive? You have to unmute yourselves if you want to join in.
LSD.
LSD.
Did you ever see What About Bob, Dean? That
What is
movie
it?
with Bill Murray a long time ago, the movie What About Bob?
What About Bob? No, that was with Bill Murray?
Yeah, well, he's kind of a little nutty and he goes, a vacation from my problems. So I guess I see it as a liberation from whatever you've currently been spinning around in, and that is life. Maybe my interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. Let me ask you about this, though. Why does he, I think your interpretation works nicely for the first line, die while you're alive. But then he comes back and he says, and be absolutely dead. Why would he bother to add that second line? What's he trying to stipulate? What loophole is he trying to close here?
Death of the ego.
Yeah. You know, if you went on, going on Kristen's theory here, if we go on a vacation and we go, oh, this is it. I've died to all my problems. I've completely forgotten about the office. I turned off my cell phone for a week. It was great. Does that solve it forever? Does that solve the problem forever? No, there's some deeper kind of dying, some deeper kind of turning off than just turning off your phone for a week. Right? So that you could go back, so that you could go back to the office, so that you could turn the cell phone back on, but you're still cool. Yes, please go ahead.
So So I see it a little bit different.
Mhm.
Saying twice about dying and then you're dead. That when we live, now we are alive, we take sometimes things for granted. We don't take it seriously enough to really enjoy now, the moment. So he tells you, when you're dead, you'll be dead, it's over. So I'm like, so be present and live now, and don't just, oh, I'm dying, or complain. It's because
Right.
at the end, we'll die, nothing matters anymore. When you're
Right.
dead, nothing matters anymore. It's finished, it's done. So this I'm saying it. That's why he said twice dying.
Yeah.
Take it seriously.
Has anyone here ever had a close shave, like something where you were in a car accident and realized you came this close to being killed, or you had a health crisis that could have killed you, and then you thought, boy, this might be it, and you pulled through?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh. And Yehudit, how did that affect you?
Okay, the first time I was 5 years old. So a car crashed into me. I think my parents were more devastated. And lucky I just got hit badly and blood and I healed. The second time that it was very difficult was my father died in an accident when I was 14. Changed my life, my mother's and my sister's life, for sure, forever. Completely different. And it still resonates. It still comes. I'm still very anxious if somebody else drives and does bad things. And not to say that I'm a great driver. I'm trying my best, but I freak out. I freak out sometimes when I'm the passenger. And when my kids just learned how to drive, I couldn't sleep. I mean, many parents go through that, but I still have that. Please tell me that you arrived. I need to know even today. Even they are adults. So that's still freaking me out. It's a trauma. It was a trauma forever. And I share with you. And the third thing was I took it seriously, of course. That 13 years ago I had cancer. And that was like, I cannot believe that a big rock fell on my head. That's why I felt it, like crushing me. Yoga and teaching yoga, I survived it. I'm fine. I'm okay. I think yoga helped me to trust the world. I'll be fine, and that's it. I'm going to go through a process. I did not fear death. I did not, but it's big. It's big. So yeah, no. I feel fine. I'm great. I don't fear death, not at all. I live now. I try to live now, enjoy the moment. So that's why I'm thinking that he twice said the word death, really to emphasize, take it seriously. I mean, don't fear it, but live now. It's now. That's how I look at it.
And you feel that those experiences, that those brushes with death that you had brought you more to this perspective of living now?
Perhaps I never had the childhood of plenty or privilege, not at all.
No.
Also, I don't want to say I survived the wars, but where I grew up, there were wars around, and right. Knowing about it and just living with it, not having fear, feeling we are strong and we are surviving it all the time.
Right.
But many of my classmates died and stuff like that. So the perspective of life and death is strong there. Don't take it for granted. That's it.
And of course,
don't fear it, but don't take it for granted.
Right. So aside from
I believe,
so aside from our own brushes with death, I mean, also, right, of course, people close to you, especially if you're young, classmates die, if a member of your family dies, that could have a profound effect. Anyone else on this?
Yes.
Judy?
I was thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah. The line about dying, and the terminology isn't coming to me right now, but the two selves, the real self and the ego self, you know, and he's suggesting that the real self, the higher self, is still alive and you can do whatever you want because you're in a higher realm. You have chosen to die to self, the self of the lower range, as it were,
Yeah.
and live for the self that is united with all the world, and you can do whatever you want because of your love that's there.
You know, in India, there are certain of these wandering yogis who've completely given up everything in normal life. They've completely given up family. They've given up even their names, their family names, all connections, all occupation, all possessions. They don't even have clothes. They walk around naked. They take ashes from the sacred fire and plaster ashes on their body. That's it. And they're known in India as the living dead. Okay. So it's, you know, we hear the living dead and, you know, we think of a zombie movie or something, but I think that's very close to the idea in the poem here, that on some profound level, you've relinquished your attachment to everything. Now, the question becomes, can you, in order to do that, in order to relinquish your attachment to all those things, do you have to physically, do you have to physically, literally live that life? Do you have to move out of your house, change your name, get rid of your clothes and, you know, plaster ashes on your body? Can there be a way to profoundly relinquish those attachments and still live among it? And I think that's what he's talking about, because then he says, then do whatever you want. Then you can live, if you've given up the attachment to it, if you've given up the deep craving that this must be this way, I must have this, whatever it is, or life is not okay. Right? You know, when the Buddha in the Four Noble Truths talks about the nature of suffering and how to get rid of suffering, when he talks about the origin of suffering, the cause of suffering, the second noble truth, the word he uses is tanha. It's Tanha, tanha. And it literally means thirst. It's usually translated as desire, which I think is not quite a good translation, because then you think, well, wait a minute, if, gee, I really want some salad with my dinner, that's a desire. Does that mean I'm not eligible for, you know, spiritual awakening? But thirst goes deeper. I think he's using it in a poetic way. You know what it's like when you're really thirsty? I mean, think about that. Just remember a time, remember what it's like, whatever you're dealing with, whatever's going on, when you're just parched and it's just like, oh man, this is not okay. I got to do something about this. And that supersedes in importance, everything else. So, you know, it's when we have that kind of thing that just, when the desire, when the requirement, when our requiring things to be a certain way and not be a certain other way, just it just sinks its claws deep into us that way. Then that's what he's talking about, and that's what I think Bunan is saying here. We can relinquish.
Could you?
Yeah, I just muted people. So when you're going to talk, unmute yourself and then mute yourself again, please. Okay. Someone else want to chime in here? on this one? Yes, please, Barbara.
Yes.
Barbara, yeah.
This reminds me of the poem we read last week, and it's about being.
Yeah, last week from Sang Chan, The Mind of Absolute Trust.
And where he said, for those who are unattached to their preferences, let go of longing and aversion.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like the poem talks about having a rebirth in your life by giving not so much preferences or so much attention to what we were talking, those outside experiences. You come back into the more spiritual existence, which actually talks about, like the other Spira, whatever his name was, talking about the screen with the movies on it. Mm-hmm. The screen being who you really are yourself, and then the movies being just the outside stuff. So for me, it seems like it's kind of a rebirth of the person, recognizing their true self.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, just to play with the vocabulary.
You always have to, for me.
Vocabulary. I would say the rebirth is the death of the person, so we can be reborn as the self. The word person comes from Greek persona. It means mask. Right? So the person, the persona, the personality.
Yeah.
Which is what we usually think of as, oh, well, that's the true identity. The idea is just, think of what it's like when you're wearing a mask, a Halloween mask, right? You're looking through the eye holes. Everyone else sees this face, but you're something behind it. You're looking out through that. So then think of your personality, whatever you're like. Oh, Barbara's like this, and she's, she moves with this kind of rhythms, and she has this kind of, this kind of sense about her, and she likes these things, and she doesn't like these things, and that, and people think, oh, Barbara, that's what they think of. That's the mask. You're, if you really examine your own experience, you look for, well, which part of that is me? Has that part always been there? Well, no. People think of, oh, I'm this way. I wasn't always that way. People think of, I like this thing. I didn't always like that thing. And yet there is something deeper that has seen all those changes over the course of my life, that has seen those things come and go, and is always peering out from behind them, like peering through the eye holes of the mask. So that's the self, that's the screen, we could say that's the screen, and what people see, and what most of us make the mistake of identifying with ourselves is the character on the screen. Because everyone keeps saying, hi, Barbara, how are you? What, right? Everyone keeps addressing that thing and kind of reinforcing our state of hypnosis into thinking we're this thing that we're not.
So when you read that he says he can do anything you want after you have that death, go die, and it's almost like saying that that person that you're talking about instead of the self is free to make a lot of different choices. Just go for it,
Right.
Because your self is consistent.
Yeah, because the self can't change, because the self can't change its characteristics because it has no characteristics.
Yeah.
The self can't get young or old or hot or cold or red or blue because it has none of those qualities. It's the quality-less, boundless beingness. One of these poems in this book I was reading earlier said, the true self is a boundless sphere. Right? Just, a way of thinking of it. It's just nothing. But it's, and we all experience that when we meditate, when we sink into that just nothing and get some flavor of that freedom, that delicious emptiness. And then more and more, then you open your eyes at some point and you go, oh, okay, now I'm back to being Dean and moving. But there's to some, that we're just less, every minute that we spend marinating in the true self, which is that delicious emptiness, weakens our false identification with the persona. Right? You're hearing that, Kristen. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah, yes, it is exciting. It's the most exciting thing in the world.
Can you say it again? I want to write it down.
Uh-oh.
Say it one more time.
Uh-oh.
Word marinate.
Yeah, every minute that you spend, what did I say? You know what? This is all being recorded, fortunately. Marinating, thank you. Every moment that you spend marinating in the delicious emptiness, which is the true self, which is what you are, weakens your false identification with the personality, which is what you think you are. Right? Right? You're just soaking that off. It's like getting in the bathtub and soaking off the grime. Right? Right? And so therefore we more and more, but it doesn't mean, and this is partly, the Zen perspective here, which they're very good at. In a lot of the Indian traditions, they're not necessarily good at that. They think, okay, I have to completely renounce my life in the material world in order to be free. But if you're truly free, you can live in it. You still at the end of the poem there, then you can do anything you want. It's not going to have that binding power on you.
No attachments. Not being attached to everything.
Right. Right. But see, now we're understanding that often misunderstood word, which is attachment. That people think, oh, attachment, like you go, yeah, I'm going to buy you a new car. They go, oh, you're not a spiritual person, you're attached. Well, no, a person, that doesn't necessarily mean you're attached. It just means it's time for a new car. Someone who thinks, oh, I can't be enlightened and drive a new car, that person is suffering from attachment.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So some of you have heard the story when my first wife, Maggie, was dying of cancer. And she was in the hospital in Summit, New Jersey. And we got a call from a friend. At the time, we were involved with this particular Buddhist organization. And she got a call from a friend in this Buddhist organization. Actually, Tova, you'll know this was John McCransky. And he's very, very sweet. And John called and said, Maggie, I've made arrangements. I can get some monks to come to your room and travel to New Jersey and come to your room and chant for you from the Bardo Todol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is kind of the orthodox prescribed thing to do for a dying person. And she said, oh, geez, John, thanks so much. I so appreciate it. But that's not been my practice during this life. So that wouldn't be authentic for me. That's not been my practice. And John said, well, what is your practice? And she said, it's just being without hope or fear. Okay. You all hearing that? Just being without hope or fear. Right? That's being dead while you're alive. That's dying to the attachment. Right?
Yeah.
And everyone will tell you, oh, we want to let go of fear. Not many people are ready for the flip side of the coin, which is let go of hope. Right? Now this part's the advanced course. If you don't want to hear this, just cover your ears for the next 2 minutes here. Right? Because so many of us live on hope. Oh, okay, right now it's quarantine sucks, but I cherish the hope one of these days we're going to be out of quarantine. What if we're not? Can you find the place in yourself right now where if we never get out of the freaking quarantine, you can be okay with it? That's Dharma practice. That's practice. You've got whatever ailment. You've got this backache, And you go, okay, if I see my chiropractor, or if I do this exercise or take some ibuprofen, I can get rid of the backache. And sure, of course, do what you can. But could you, if the backache is going to, if that's going to be it for the rest of your life, can you find the place where you can let go of the hope of ever getting rid of it? Right? Because we can't truly, profoundly let go of fear without letting go of hope, because hope is the flip side of fear.
Yeah.
They're really two different names for the same thing, because they're both an investment in the future over which we have no control, turning out a certain way. Right? I hope I will win the lottery, then life will be swell. I fear I won't win the lottery, then life will suck. It's the same thing. Right? Right. And true, and it's there in all the traditions. It's the true letting go that these Zen masters are talking about. It's the true in Christian faith, the offering it all up, surrendering it all up to God or to Christ, offering up your life. I think it's the same thing. It's just somehow, whatever you call it, or don't call it anything, but finding that profound letting go. Not being caught up in things have to be this way for life to be okay. Things can't be that way for life to be okay. And then you can find the deep, infinite okayness that is unconditional, that doesn't depend on an outcome. Because otherwise we're investing our happiness, we're investing our sense of okayness in a particular outcome. And then we're not free, then we're slaves. We're slaves to an outcome, which is something outside of us, beyond our control.
I was just thinking, I mean, in the poem, I think just particularly in the West and our culture, the word dead is just like, right. I think that's part of it too. Just, and I said this last week, but I feel like I'm curious what the translation, because it sounds very modern the way that poem reads right now. And I'm just, I wonder.
I don't know. I'm looking at it again. It's kind of hard to say it sounds modern or non-modern, because the language is so simple, and that kind of simple language is very typical of Zen poetry, and the whole Zen sensibility is not having a bunch of fancy, completely unlike most Hindu literature and Hindu culture, where everything is very fancy and like gilt-edged. This one teacher I had, every publication they put out in the organization had to have gilt-edged pages, whereas Zen, you go into a Tibetan temple, and everything's very elaborate, very, very Baroque, all these deities and colors and all that. You go into a Zen temple or a Zen do, a Zen monastery, they're like shakers. Everything is just plain wood. You won't even find an image of the Buddha. No graven images. It's a different style. So this language is more like that. But this stuff can sneak up on us in all kinds of funny ways. Yafa, as you know, not long ago, I had a big birthday. I know I'm not supposed to say how old I am, but let's just say I had a big birthday, and I'm the first member of my immediate family to have achieved to that birthday. Right. And it's funny because I had a little bit of apprehension as I was approaching it. I was a little bit holding my breath, like, hey, am I going to make it? Right. Because my mom didn't, My dad didn't. My brother didn't. My first wife didn't. And then I did. And then so then I exhaled. And since then, it's funny. I mean, it's completely just a mental, it's a made up thing. But there has been a feeling, I must say, of, okay, now I'm on the bonus round. It's all good. That whatever happens now is gravy. But of course, the reality is it's all gravy from day one. It's all a bonus round. The vast majority of the infinite number of possible people have never been born, will never get to be born. We're this tiny minority that somehow came into manifestation. Wow. Whatever happens is bonus. And I really think that's somehow the experience that's being conveyed here. So that's good stuff. Anything else on this one? Okay, let's do another one. Okay, let's do page 45. Page 45. It's a poem by Bunan, another Zen master. One instant. Oh, by the way, anyone on YouTube who's just tuning into this series, the book we're using here is The Enlightened Heart, edited by Stephen Mitchell. Not The Enlightened Mind, that's the companion volume. The Enlightened Heart, edited by Stephen Mitchell. So page 45, Bunan. One instant is eternity. Eternity is the now. When you see through this one instant, you see through the one who sees. You read it again. One instant is eternity. Eternity is the now. When you see through this one instant, you see through the one who sees. Any reactions? Yafa says thumbs up. Yep. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I kind of hate even to say anything about it. I think it's so perfect on its own. But let me ask you a question, just because I have a mouth and it keeps moving. Most people, when they think of the word eternity, what do they think of? What do they think of?
Forever.
Forever. Forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. A bunch of time. A whole bunch of time. Millions of years and then billions and trillions. There's a fantastic passage in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. Oh my God, it's so great. And it's Joyce's semi-autobiographical first novel. And he talks about growing up Irish Catholic in the old Irish Catholic church, and coming into his adolescence and having regular biological urges, and having assignations with the local whores, and then coming into church and confession. And at one point in the book, he goes on a spiritual retreat. And this kind of the centerpiece of the book, we get this whole sermon from this old-fashioned fire and brimstone priest. And what he's doing, and the whole sermon is about hell and how horrible hell is, where most of you are gonna go, right? And it's just incredibly, it's so brilliantly awful, the descriptions of all the physical sufferings and the emotional sufferings, and then it's a series of sermons, and then one whole sermon is on the eternity of the torments of hell. And he goes through this whole thing about, imagine if you had a vast beach, I think he says, or a vast desert the size of the entire planet. And heaped up on it was this huge mountain of sand, bigger than all the sand in the world. And once every 100,000 years, something like this, a little bird comes and it takes one speck of that sand and flies away with it. And then after another 100,000 years, he comes and takes another speck of the sand and flies away with it. He says, after all those, millions and millions of years, the eternity is, it wouldn't be taking away even a speck of the eternity of torment that you're going to spend in hell if you don't straighten up right now. By the end of this chapter, the hero is just completely, blubbering in tears and renouncing his sins and promising to be good, but it doesn't last long. So yeah, this is the way people think of eternity: long, long, long bunch of time. But eternity really means, and we can actually, if we break down the word to its roots, what it means is timelessness. Timelessness. Millions and billions of years is not eternity. It's just a bunch of time. It's just a bunch of time. It's just more of the same. Have you noticed that time flies when you're having fun? Right, as they say. Time drags when you're standing in line at the pharmacy or the post office or Starbucks. Have you noticed that sometimes time goes away? Right? When time flies, when you're having a good time, right? Time seems to go by very quickly. That's like a mild version of when you're having a time that's good beyond good. And then time goes away completely. Right? That's when you in the transcendent. And you've all experienced that. When people come out of meditation and they go, wait, how long was that? Because the sense of time, because time is just on the surface of the ocean. And in the transcendent, we're sinking into the ocean. We're sinking into the depths. When you do something, if it's working in your garden or doing the sport you love to do, or playing the instrument you love to play, or spending time with your beloveds, or whatever it is, sometimes there's just that sense of timelessness. And we think of it as, oh, it's just some odd kind of psychological phenomenon. But what if it's not? What if the odd psychological phenomenon is the sense of time? And when we have the sense of timelessness, we're kind of seeing through that a little bit. So people think of awakening, enlightenment. We get these glimpses of transcendence, and then we, for convenience, we define enlightenment as where, okay, now you're in the transcendent, you're consciously in the transcendent all the time, even as you're participating in activity. It's like you're transcending all the time. But more precisely, you're seeing, you're consciously rooted in that which is beyond time. You know, people think, well, what happens after you die? Is there life after death? They ask, does awareness, does consciousness, people ask me this thing, you know, does consciousness continue after death? Does awareness continue after death? And the answer is no. Awareness never continues during, after death, or before death. Awareness is the transcendent. Awareness has nothing to do with time, just like it has nothing to do with space. It's not a bunch of inches and millions of miles and then one more mile to just completely blow your skull open, and that's infinity. Infinity is no space, just like eternity is no time. They're both the transcendent, different ways of approaching the idea of the transcendent. And therefore, that's what we're living right now, because it's the only place there is to live. It's all there is. We're living in the now. We're living in each now. We're living in eternity, right? So that's back to the poem. One instant is eternity, right? Any instant, if you see it clearly. Eternity is the now. When you see through this one instant, you see through the one who sees. What does that mean? You see through the one who sees. Who or what is the one who sees? Yeah, Kristen? You got your hand up. You're doing something with your hand. Oh, you're posing. You're just posing. Okay.
No, I'm still majorly thinking about it as I'm massaging my thumb from too much work. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Well, how about the one who sees is the one that sees through the eye holes in the mask, right? So you see, it's making an equivalence here. When you see through the instant, in other words, we think of instances, we think of time, and even all these people, you know, it's become such even a spiritual cliche: be here now, live in the now, live in the present moment. And that's pretty good. That's better than being completely strung out in hopes and fears about the future, or nostalgia or resentments and recriminations about the past. That's an improvement on that. But still, that's seeing the now as, oh, the present moment. It's like, oh, a series of nows, like beads on a string. Right? They're still like little chunks of time, little chunks of time. Time is not chunky. Time does not exist. Time, quoting Rupert Spira here, time is what eternity looks like when viewed through the mind. Okay? And by mind, we mean the thinking, the conceptual part of us. Time is what eternity looks like when viewed through the mind. So when we transcend the mind, when we let go of concepts, we stop seeing eternity as, we stop seeing what we think is time, these little chunks. Any chunk, even if, because look, if I say to you now, live in the now. Now. Well, I'm saying, where's the ah? Where's the ooh? Right? Well, I'm saying the ah and the ooh are in the future. By the time I get to the right now, there's at least three sounds there. Now. So while I'm saying, you see, you're anticipating, ow. That's in the future. Actually, the anticipating is in the present, because there is no future. By the time I get to ooh, that nah is a memory. So now it's too big a chunk to be truly the now, to be truly instantaneous. What if I say it really fast? No. Does that solve the problem? No. What if I say it in a nanosecond? No. Right? No. Even if it's a nanosecond or, whatever, a gamillionth of a nanosecond, it's too chunky. Doesn't matter how small we make the chunks. They're still chunks. That's not the now, that's time. Right? And it kind of starts, hurting the brain to try to think about it this way. But it's completely painless to just let go of all that and sink into the transcendent, as you all know how to do. And then we get some sense of that. And more you find yourself living from there. Right? You hearing that? When you see through this one instant, you see through the one who sees, right? The more we sink into that place of timelessness, we transcend the illusion of time that is synonymous with transcending the so-called small self, the personality, the false identification with, the dean, this thing that we think we are. Yeah, Barbara?
So am I to understand the way you think is that the transcendent self has no beginning or no end.
Right.
So we don't think of time at all with it. So it's not a matter of this temporary time we are in now, once we reach the transcendent self.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Is that what I'm
Yeah. And when we say, and of course, when you say when we reach the transcendent self, of course, what you mean is when we become consciously, clearly aware of it, because there's nowhere else for us to ever be. There's nothing else for us to ever be. So yeah, it can't have a beginning, a middle, and an end, because those are that's the geography of time. And by its nature, time is something that happens on the surface of the transcendent. Our measures of time, space, those are, we've got our 3 dimensions of time, of space, and our 1 dimension of time, and cosmologists and mathematicians do all this abstract stuff, which I can't follow it, but where they can, at least theoretically, they can posit, 5th dimensions and 6th and 7th dimensions and all that. However many dimensions there could be, where are they? Where are they taking place within? And it's all got to be within that which has no dimension. No dimension, no space, no time, no nothing. No nothing. And yet it's all there is.
It's always there, right? It's always there for us to recognize or
it's always here.
I'm sorry, it's always here.
It's always here. Even to say, you see, our language is our whole language has evolved very beautifully to describe life in the finite. Life within the matrix of time and space. When we try to talk about that within which the matrix has been constructed, which is the transcendent, our language starts to break down. So we find ourselves saying things like, it's always there. But see, even to say there is like it's giving it location.
Yeah.
Right.
That's also
even to say it always, even always is like, time for all time, right? But time is within it. All theirs are within it. All nows are within it. Even to say within, I'm using language that comes from a spatial model, because that's what we have, right? So even to say, okay, it always exists. Okay, it exists. Okay, we're safe with that. But even to say that, it would be more accurate to say it is existence. And things which exist by participating, by being expressions of that quality of existence. I don't know if this kind of language helps or hurts, but in case it helps, there it is. Right. And of course, and it's baffling, you know, like from the expression on your face right now, Barbara, that's an expression of bafflement. And that's normal. That's what we do when we try to approach this stuff with our mind. And it's valuable to do that for a while. Then you relax your mind, you sit down, you close your eyes, you meditate, or you know, turn on your music and dance for a while and go, oh yeah, right. This, here, now.
Well, then, but I would think that existence, the word you used, is actually experiential, and that would put it in a different realm for me.
Not sure what you mean.
When you say it's always in existence.
No, not it's always in. I didn't say it's always in existence. I'm saying
in existence.
It is existence.
Oh, okay.
And everything else is in it.
Okay.
And all of this language I'm using is complete bullshit. But we just,
it's starting to make me want to get a cocktail.
yeah, good, perfect. We're right at the time. It's quitting time. It's cocktail hour. But so what we try to do is just make it the very best bullshit we can. Right. We try to, and just take it for what it is. You know, it's, I always go back to T.S. Eliot. I got to use words when I talk to you. And which any of the words that kind of make you sit up a little bit and go, oh, yeah. And then that's valuable. And any of the others that just make you more baffled. Sometimes it's good to be baffled for a while. Sometimes it's good to knock your head against the concept for a while, because sometimes if you knock your head enough, then, you know, you crack your skull open and then some light gets in. Yeah. Tova, before we adjourn. Yeah, Tova.
Yeah. Can we think about it as paradoxical between the relative and the absolute? That it's the interplay between them that makes it paradoxical.
Yeah, the interplay between the absolute and the relative, or, you know, in Buddhist terms, between form and emptiness, is always going to be paradoxical. As long as we're looking at it as two different things, as form and emptiness. You know, there's a saying, in the mind of God, there are no paradoxes. Right? Things only look paradoxical when we're looking at them with the mind, because the mind, you know, makes categories like form and emptiness, finite and infinite. And of course, as you know, Tova, the ultimate teaching, Dharma teaching on this is in the Heart Sutra: form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Then there's no paradox. But it seems like a paradox until you experience it. You know, and you go, wait, how can form possibly be emptiness? How can emptiness possibly be form? Well, as long as you have not experienced it, and you're just asking that with the mind, there's no answer. There's no answer. Once you've experienced it, there's no question. There's no way to get from the question to the answer. You don't get your question. You never get your question answered. You experience it, and then that answer dies, and that question dies, and you're reborn in the answer. So if this is baffling, just forget about it. Don't worry about a thing. Everything's fine. That's the bottom line. It's all good, as our friend Bunan said before. It's all good. Do whatever you want. Thank you, everyone, so much. We'll see you next time. We'll do something else. Have fun.
Thank you.
Don't forget to enjoy being.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you. Thank you.